So India is helping the UK save lives. Meanwhile, China is helping Pakistan look tough, sort of. Pakistan has a new main battle tank. They're calling it the Haider. But that's an eyewash. The tank is actually a rebranded Chinese model, the VT-4. Pakistan wanted hundreds of these VT-4s, but surprise, surprise, China has sent them faulty equipment. So to save face, Pakistan began assembling them at home. I suppose it's better to screw it up yourself than have the Chinese do it for you. The self-assembled tanks are being called the Haider, and now they have self-inflicted flaws. Our next report has the details.
Pakistan's army held a grand ceremony recently. Their Chief of Army Staff, General Asim Munir, was the guest of honor. In attendance were some top officials from China, including the Chinese ambassador to Pakistan. There were also officials from the Chinese defense firm Norinco. All of them had gathered for the unveiling of a tank. The Haider Main Battle Tank. Pakistan says this is a proud moment. A leap forward in indigenous tank development. But is that really the case? Let's take a closer look at the Haider. It is operated by a crew of 3, a driver, a commander and a gunner. The main weapon is a 125mm smoothbore main gun. It can fire armor-piercing rounds, high-explosive rounds and anti-tank guided missiles. Other than this, the tank has a 7.62mm coaxial machine gun up front and a 12.7mm heavy machine gun mounted at the rear of the commander hatch. This is standard for any modern tank, but Pakistan is of course proud of having reached universal benchmarks. The tank is powered by a 1,200 horsepower diesel engine. It can reach a top speed of 70 kilometers per hour. And it has an operational range of about 500 kilometers. Now, all this seems fine at first glance. It shows a defense industry on the rise, working to become self-sufficient. But take a step back. This is Pakistan we're talking about. Of course there's something suspicious. You figure that out when you look a little deeper into the Haider's history. First off, the tank was never meant to be indigenous. It was supposed to be an import. The Haider is actually the Chinese VT-4 main battle tank. It's an export version of China's own tanks. Export here meaning inferior. China had signed a deal with Pakistan in 2017. They were going to provide Islamabad with about 300 VT-4s. But when the first few tanks arrived, flaws were uncovered. China had sent tanks with faulty armor. The dimensions of some tank parts were incorrect, and problems were discovered during field firing trials. So, what was Pakistan to do? They couldn't scrap the deal. They had sunk in a lot of money already, and that's a big deal for the cash-strapped nation. So the army decided to hoodwink the public instead. Pakistan signed a licensing agreement with Norinco, the company that makes VT-4s. The tanks would be assembled in Pakistan instead, with most parts coming in from China, like the engine and other components, but some smaller components are modified in Pakistan. Not exactly a big win for local defense manufacturing. These tanks are now saddled with makeshift Pakistani parts, along with their inherent Chinese problems, like relatively weak armor compared to most modern main battle tanks. Talk about taking the worst of both worlds. Pakistan insists on painting this as a win, but the country's rivals shouldn't be overly worried. The Haider looks like just another Pakistani gimmick.